Yo, what's good with everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Gifted Who's podcast. I'm pretty sure this is episode 54, and I'm joined here today by Deuce and Mo of the Deuce and Mo podcast. Also, some great Kings content creators. I did the podcast with Deuce last year. Now we have Mo with us as well. Say hello to the people.
Hi, people.
Yes, what is up, everybody? Appreciate you guys having me.
Yes, and I'm excited because there's a lot to get to. There's a lot of season overall recap to do, but I think the Kings have made a lot of moves, a lot of things to monitor ahead of the 2026 season as well. But I just want to get your quick overall reactions to the Demar Derozan signing. How did that feel?
I think it felt like a jolt of energy for the city in so many different ways, for the organization, obviously. And I think for us, it was really cool to see, because I think when you look at the Kings, when it comes to free agents and this market over the years, like winning was going to solve everything. And it's not like they're winning everything, especially last year, didn't even make the playoffs. But there's people like Demar Derozan that see the vision and see what can lie ahead.
The reality, Gifted, is he is their biggest free agent signing in their franchise history. That's crazy.
Wow.
I mean, you can go up and down. That's you go, oh, really? What about this? No, it's like Vlade Divac was a big deal in 1998. Brad Miller, they got in a sign and trade. He was an all-star here. But like no one with DeMar's his resume, his legacy, like has ever chosen to sign with the Sacramento Kings. I mean, if you can go, you can say Vince Carter, but Vince Carter was like,
he was on his way out.
He was on his way out. DeMar Derozan may be 35 years old, just turned 35. He's played 93% of the games in his NBA career.
Ding, 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 ding.
Level of consistency. He doesn't miss games. What style of game do you want him to play? Do you want him to be more of a playmaker? He can do that. Do you need him to go get buckets? He can do that. I think it's a huge deal for Sacramento to get him. And there's so much talk about, but what about the Kings defense? Kings defense actually after the All-Star break in the March last year through the rest of the season was pretty good. It was their offense that was a problem, especially when Monk went down, especially when Herter went down. You looked around going, who besides De'Aaron Fox is going to go get me a bucket? And with how talented the Western Conference is, they needed someone else that can go get a bucket. Now they got a few guys. You bring back Malik Monk, you have De'Aaron Fox, and now you add DeMar Derozan.
I love the analysis that you bring with that, because I remember last year's podcast, right? We talked about like how good the Kings would be. And I think the biggest difference in season were the injuries that they had to kind of live on through. The first stretch where like we saw De'Aaron Fox miss time, clearly the entire team was really impacted. And then when Monk went down, it became even more of that. I think DeMar Derozan, what a lot of people do not give him credit for, is the biggest thing you highlighted, being an Iron Man, being available and reliable for the games that he has been able to play. Also, his big time shot making, right? I feel like there were times in the Kings offense where if the DHOs were not working out, you didn't have guys who could flat out just put their head down and get to the basket and show some, age. His game is predicated on outplaying guys in terms of the mental side and understanding to pick his spots and getting to the free throw line to break up sometimes what can be a offense that can not be as loud, right? Also, he's able to run and gun and get out in transition and be another passer as well. I think that really fits in, and I think he can make reads because he's had to play with bigs as well who can do things. So I think DeMar Derozan is a pretty good fit, because people question, I would say, the defense, but the biggest thing I would say is while Monk was out, you got a chance to see more and more of one of my favorite players in the league, Keon Ellis. A lot of people don't want to say his name, but I think Keon Ellis was such a revelation for the Kings, such a steal of a player. What were your thoughts about him last season?
Well, first, I loved your breakdown of even DeMar right there. I just thought the way that you talk about him as an individual basketball player is fantastic, what he can add to offense. Yeah. And then whose name are we not supposed to say? Oh, Keon Ellis. So Keon Ellis, he what's been fun about him, Deuce and I got to call a lot of his games in the G League with the Stockton Kings. And so over that time, I remember seeing these stretches where he would show these. We always knew coming out of college that he could play defense. You'd see it get better and better as like competition came on, whatever. But it was always his offense people were curious about. And I felt like his confidence kept really building in the G. And then I was like, but if you don't take over in the G League, you always question, like, is this player really going to be an NBA player? That's usually how they shine. Keon Ellis plays basketball the right way, and he plays it the right way mentally and physically. And from that standpoint, there's no ego with him, although he has the confidence in himself to believe that he can take any shot, that he can get to the basket, that he can be a better option out there on offense. He's getting his work done on the defensive end to really make sure that he is earning that time on the basketball floor.
When Herter goes down, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with the lineup. A lot of people are calling for them to start Malik Monk because of what he can do scoring. Mike Brown has been very adamant about, we love what he brings off the bench. They put Keon Ellis in that lineup. It changed the Kings defense. De'Aaron played much better defensively last year, but what Keon Ellis did defensively, being able to guard multiple positions,
was huge.
I mean, De'Aaron Fox, I think, was tied last season in deflections. He was near the top of the NBA in steals. But when you look at when Keon Ellis was put into the starting lineup, he was in the team lead for deflections. Good wingspan. The other thing is, like, he's just a consistent 3-point shooter in this Kings offense. He's going to get some good opportunities, some catch and shoot opportunities. He did at the G League, shooting over 40%. Did the same thing last year in the NBA. He is a really, really good player for this team, and a player that, as Morgan was talking about, like, he doesn't have to go score 20 to have an impact. He's going to impact things, take pressure off De'Aaron Fox in some ways too, right? Like, good. It's not all up to De'Aaron to go out there and get stops. He's got somebody else out there. Keegan's ability to defend out there too.
And really quick too, his experience of having to start in those situations, I think, has truly helped him have that type of confidence and of understanding he can play any role, whether it's being part of the depth, coming off the bench, or having to step up and being in that starting role. Like, it was really fun to see him step up.
And I think the Kings have some versatility at that now, a little bit defensively too, because you're right about Demar. Like, I think the rap on him is, he can't guard. I'm like, yeah, he can't. You're not having him defend guards. Okay. There's going to be some problematic matchups against some athletic guys. But to be honest, going back, and we did a deep dive into his defense last year with Chicago. They put him on some bigger guys. They put him on some wings. They put him on some fours. And he had much better success against those guys. And so I think when you look at where the Kings struggle a little bit defensively in their starting lineup when Herter was out there and with Barnes, they didn't downgrade defensively, right? And they were able to improve their defense last year with Harrison Barnes in the lineup, who's not known for being a really good defensive player. I think Demar Derozan can be a better defensive player. And then what he does offensively, like we talked about, I have no doubt that the Kings are a better team this year. The West is going to be grueling. It's going to be tough. I think the Kings are being slept on a little bit, and that's probably a good thing.
I could not agree more. I was so impressed because I feel like Keon Ellis felt like the culmination of everything you wanted in Davion Mitchell in a way, right? Where he's able to be aggressive on the perimeter, but he's also smart, doesn't really foul out like that, plays super duper hard. And again, the consistent 3-point shooting. The fact that he's able to do that in his position is why I personally believe for the Kings starters, he should be in that unit because of his overall impact. And like you said, right, he doesn't have to have a 15-point game, a 20-point game. He just has to go out there and be himself, where he can score, he can play defense and play his role, and he fits into that role perfectly. And also, he plays. I think a lot of people are viewing transactions by all these teams like, oh yeah, that team got better. But who's going to be out there playing on the floor and being durable? That stuff matters significantly. And I do got to say, last year, the impact from Sabonis in terms of always being there, always being present, and elevating his game with those two-man actions was a much bigger action. But having DeMar DeRozan as that mid-range punch, who can consistently close out games. We saw it all year last year, right? He was in the clutch player of the year conversation again because of that impact. So I think the lineups make a lot of sense, but there is a player I have to ask you guys about. I wrote this down specifically in my notes because to me, this player is the guy that's going to shift the Kings season. If he can take that step, I'm looking at Keegan Murray.
Yeah.
What are you guys thinking about him?
Isn't that what the question mark for a lot of people? And when I say the question mark, it's the question mark of what the leap is going to be for Keegan. Because I think we saw the leap defensively last year. And then we saw him take, if you want to call it, a step back on the offensive end, but he didn't. It was just his shooting. On the offensive end, he actually added something with his handles. You know, he was able to score off the dribble. He was
mid-range game.
Yeah, there was he had more of a dynamic game. And so I think this year, assuming that Keegan Murray, all he likes to do is golf, play basketball, and like hang out at his house, like that he's probably been working on his game and he's probably been working on both ends of the floor once again. And I do believe he can take that leap, but I think the question that I always have for him is, can he take that mental leap? And I think he has the confidence, but with someone like Demar Derozan, the question is, how many shots will that take away from Keegan Murray? Demar Derozan wants Keegan Murray to take shots. Keegan Murray needs Keegan Murray to want to take shots, if that makes sense.
Completely agree. I'm super high on Keegan. A guy who is 6'8", 6'9", who has shooting ability and that can defend multiple positions. I mean, they were throwing him last year, and I think early on it was almost by necessity. They threw him to the fire. They went, "Oh, go ahead and check Steph Curry. Go ahead and defend Donovan Mitchell." Like, they put him on some tough matchups for sure. And he did a pretty good job on it. And so I think his versatility defensively, especially considering year one, the guy was getting hunted defensively. He's a rookie, he's still learning the game. Year two, they could not hunt him anymore. And for him, it's getting to the point, as Morgan said, to have that switch of like, go get yours, right? If you're open, go attack. Don't defer just because it's De'Aaron Fox or DeMar DeRozan or Domantas Sabonis. You're a 6'8", 6'9" forward who could shoot it, put the ball on the floor. You've got a mid-range game and you can guard.
Be the guy.
Right.
I'm with you 100%. If he's able to take a significant step, and that to me is being able to guard like he did last year, and then the shot making, I'm not saying it has to get back to what he did his rookie year, but I want the efficiency to be a little closer to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Kings are going to be really dangerous, I think.
Yeah, because Gifted, don't get us wrong. Like, he's going to be a good player in this league no matter what, but it's exactly what we're saying. What type of team can this King squad be if Keegan Murray were to take another step, another leap in year 3?
Year 3. Happy birthday to Keegan Murray. I see Joel,
year 3
MVP in the chat, saying he got fried by Steph. Hey, you can hit me up on the side. We could sit down and do a film session if you really want to go there, because I can go ahead and show you examples that he actually did pretty solid against Steph. You're not going to shut down Steph Curry. Although some could argue Keon Ellis might have done it in the play-in game. We don't have to go there, though, because this guy just won it for Team USA. We salute him, but we don't forget what happened in that play-in game.
And it's Steph effing Curry. I mean, come on, but go on.
Yeah. I just want to say, as a Warriors fan, seeing the chat make him get strays, we'll get to those things. We'll get to those things, at some point. But yeah, Keegan Murray, to me, I agree with that, right? Just because a star player is frying a star, right? That's fine. But it's about shot quality. Are you making it harder on these guys? You can't stop any of these guys, but are you making it harder? And I think Keegan's biggest step last year was getting more comfortable with the ball in his hands, dribbling the ball, getting to his spots more. To me, this season now is, okay, taking that confidence and extending it, going further with it, getting more comfortable with taking even more shots, even more catch and shoot opportunities, and doing that with DeMar DeRozan, De'Aaron Fox, and all these guys can be pretty big. But I just find it hard to believe that people view this Kings team and don't think they've gotten better, when not only did you sign DeMar DeRozan, but you re-signed a core player in Malik Monk, which a lot of people felt like was gone, and he re-signed with the Kings. How did y'all feel about that?
Oh,
I mean, I was surprised. I thought for sure he was probably going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And because financially it would have been more rewarding potentially. But, he got a huge pay increase, and I think he means so much to this team because there's one thing that you can't mess with, and that's Malik Monk's confidence. He's not just a bucket getter, he's a playmaker. His ability in the two-man game with Domantas Sabonis, he's not scared to take the big shot. He'll go dunk on your head. I just think he's like the exact type of player you want on a squad because there's some nights in the league, man, where you're in the dog days of the season. You're on a 6-game road trip.
You need someone to lift you up.
And the stars are going to a slow start. He comes in right away, and it's an instant spark.
So it's all of those things. And then you just see how his game has matured since he's been with the Sacramento Kings. And I think that's giving a lot of love, not only to Malik Monk for self-discipline, but I think for having a coach like Mike Brown who sets a standard and is like, this isn't going to fly. Do you want to see minutes? Do you want to see the floor? This isn't going to fly otherwise. And you saw his minutes increase over the year because, and even in the last couple of years, you just see the way that he's been playing on the basketball floor. It's like not as chaotic. His chaotic energy is channeled into so many different great things on the floor. And then the playmaker that he has become because he does make defenses collapse. It's just, so yes, all the things Malik Monk, yes, but then the night, was it a night that we heard Malik Monk was saying? I forget what it was. It was like after the Alex Caruso to OKC. So I think it was like a day. Okay. I'll never forget. I was stunned that he was staying and that it actually happened. And I think just mostly because at the end of the day, this is a business and I expect some of these players to find happiness in the business and in money. But Malik Monk is finding happiness in the style of basketball that's being played here in Sacramento.
I think he's connected with being in Sacramento too, just the lifestyle, and he digs it. And I just think about some of the weapons the Kings have at this point. Malik can go get and score 30 on a given night, right? DeMar DeRozan can. Fox can. We've seen Keegan do it. Like, they have a lot of weapons on this team from an offensive standpoint. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how Mike Brown tinkers with things throughout the year and to see like what the ceiling is for this group, because we can talk all day about, man, I like this team, how good it is, but man, the West was tight last year. It was tight the year before that. It's going to be tight this year. 100%. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I have been looking at the West day after day after day. I've been watching film on a lot of these teams. And again, going back to how we thought last year would go, Minnesota was the team that I felt like was going to be at the top. And they were just so dominant, even with Anthony Edwards being so young. And now you have a lot of these teams getting confidence, right? Memphis, another team that was not in the playoff picture at all, which I expect to firmly be at the top with Minnesota, right? Even Denver, they got worse, but you get a chance to see their young players have production with the athleticism, right? Like, there's so many teams that make me feel like, wow, you have to account for these teams. There's at least 10 to 11 teams in the West who legitimately believe that they can actually be playoff or play-in teams. So it's not going to get any easier. And for that, you look at the stability of these franchises and continuity, right? How are these players comfortable with playing in high pressure moments together? And more importantly, who's the coach that's guiding them? Who's going to make sure that they have productive lineups to have sustained success? And I feel like keeping your head coach and maintaining him was a very, very big part of that. I know there were some rumors about Mike Brown's contract, this and that, but getting him solidified back must be a great feeling, right?
I think to me it was a no-brainer. The Kings are getting ready to start their 40th season in Sacramento. Their 40th season. They have 10 winning seasons in 40 years. 10. 8 of those came under Rick Adelman during that run from 98 to 06. The final 2 have come under Mike Brown. Okay. They've had 8 billion coaches. It's constant turnover and having some stability. Even though the Kings missed it last year, this wasn't like, hey, they missed the playoffs and they won 37 games. Okay. They won what, 46 games last year? It's not like they were a joke, right? That's the nature of the West. And now, to me, it was a no-brainer. You keep this. He has helped shift the culture. He has brought winning back to an organization that has not sniffed winning. And now there's pressure on him and the organization that, okay, got you your contract. We got you DeRozan. We brought back Monk. Now, like, you got to have some success here. But to me, it was a no-brainer. You had to bring him back.
Stability is so important in sports. And I think it's hilarious. I laugh every year. I don't watch the NFL as much. And every year when I see it's, what is it? Black Monday? What do they call
Black
it?
Friday, maybe.
Black Friday. No, I think Black Friday is the shopping one. Whatever they call it.
Yeah, you're right. After the season.
Yeah, but they fire all the coaches on that Monday. And it's just like, to me, it's always so laughable. And it's laughable because, one, these rich people want to just put the blame all on one person usually, right? Yeah. So that's hilarious. And then two, it's like you really think about deep down sports, what a coach could mean to whether it's a youth team or an AU team, a high school team, a college team, go down the line, a leader, and what being around that leader for the amount of time and building that relationship can actually do for something to produce success. And I think sometimes that just gets overlooked, like we don't humanize a coach or a situation. And I'm just so damn happy that the Sacramento Kings chose to continue this journey with Mike Brown, and not to act like, oh, he's perfect, but it doesn't matter. He has also shown that he can do some great things here in Sacramento, helping this team see a playoff berth. And then on top of all that, you're making players happy that they want to stay here and or that they want to sign here.
What it's all about, because right now I think the Kings are at a very important moment where the franchise has had success, right? Even though they did not make the playoffs again, they won a ton of games. They had, many nights where they were competitive in all of these games. And more importantly, they're not the laughing stock of the NBA. They're looked at to be a legitimate competitive team on a night-to-night basis. So maintaining the guy who was at the forefront of you making that shift is key, right? And I think that speaks volumes to your star player with Fox, where he's been here ever since he was drafted, and finally seeing it shift around and not being pulled off after one season where his best friend is back, his coach is back. I think that can really get him going in the right way as well, because Fox, to me, still hasn't reached his peak yet as a player. I feel like he's working on expanding his range even more as a three-point shooter. So I'm very excited to see him play off of DeMar DeRozan under his new head coach with more continuity. And by new, I mean, like, obviously newly signed or whatever. But I think that continuity is going to help him out even more.
Yeah, and I think for De'Aaron, that's where the DeMar signing is such a big deal. Having another guy that could take pressure off of him, that's the thing with De'Aaron. There's been so much pressure on him. Like, hey, De'Aaron, we need you to push the pace. Oh, by the way, we need you to be our leading scorer almost every night. Oh, and we need you to guard. It's a lot to ask, right? So, late game situations, the ball is going to be in your hand. You have to go make something happen, right? So I think adding DeMar to the mix just alleviates some of that. It's just like you can't just focus on De'Aaron. You can't focus on there's a lot of weapons out there that I think it's going to allow De'Aaron. I think De'Aaron's got a chance to be an all-defensive player this year.
I think led the league in steals last year,
and near the top of deflections, right? So so his activity defensively was there. I think he's got another level he can get to on that end of the ball. I think there's another level offensively. You mentioned the 3-point shooting. I think there's some criticism about, maybe he'd settle every once in a while. De'Aaron took the most threes of his NBA career last year. He made the most threes of his NBA career last year, just under 37%. You'll take that. If De'Aaron's shooting 37% from three, I'm signing up. Now, are there examples of games last year where did you really need to take 13 tonight? Could you go ahead and get to the mid-range spot or attack the basket? But this is where I go to, all right, when he's nicked up in the middle of a season, his ankle's bugging him. Maybe he is settling a little bit. And it goes to what I was just saying. You add DeMar DeRozan to the mix. Does that allow De'Aaron Fox to take a night off?
But it's
It's
that, but it's also, I think sometimes like people go, oh, can't they just practice their threes in practice? No, half the time these teams aren't even getting practices in between games. Can't they do that in the offseason? Sure. But is that NBA minutes that you are practicing those threes, right? That you are getting those reps. So you have to do this stuff in games. And I'm so with Deuce, like you're going to learn from some of those mistakes of taking 13 threes. And then you're also going to make those adjustments and understand, okay, what can my body take? How can I make sure I'm still also using my base, using my legs in those threes if I'm putting a lot of energy into my legs, being explosive, getting by people? It's like all these things you have to think about as a point guard, as someone that's obviously going to score the basketball a lot. But Deuce is exactly right when it comes to Demar and having someone else that the pressure can be on at times. And guess what? There's 82 games. There's going to be nights that everyone sucks on the floor and Mike Brown pulls the ball off. You know what I mean? I think sometimes people are just like, that can't happen. And for De'Aaron Fox, but I will say what can't happen though, he can't be inconsistent. Too many dips throughout his seasons of when we're seeing him play some of his best basketball. And he'll take a dip, usually because he's nicked up and he wants to keep playing. And it's like, you're best when you're healthy. So make sure that you're taking the rest you need as well.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point is, there are going to be highs and lows throughout an NBA season. We see it even with the great players. But that's the difference between good and great stars, right?
Absolutely.
Consistency, doing it almost every night. You can't have a 2-week stretch of being like, oh, what? You're not very efficient out there. So it is doing it on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I think that is spot on. And I think DeMar is so instrumental because remember, the idea for the Kings, at least in my head, is Monk is your backup spark plug to give you the scoring for the second unit. When you have to elevate him to the starting position, it takes that force away, which adds so much more of everyone else. I think the staggers can be a lot more creative with DeMar there. And now I feel like if you're Fox, you can say, okay, DeMar, Sabonis, and Monk can all score the basketball at a high level. Even Keegan can too. I don't have to push myself so hard if I know I'm truly hurt. I can basically take it a bit off now because I know he can lead. Because all last year for the Bulls, even though they were not a good team, down the stretch, DeMar DeRozan could be spectacular on a night-to-night basis. And again, I saw so many games last year of this Kings team where they're literally right there, but a possession or two where they just couldn't get a great shot off, this and that. Having another ball handler to help give guys other avenues to be successful is so pivotal for that. But that does bring me to my next question, which is, what is your evaluation of the Kings' second unit this year? You guys drafted, I believe, Devin Carter. I want to know all your thoughts about that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things to break down with Devin Carter just obviously not being available. And he's going to be reevaluated after 6 months, which doesn't mean he'll be playing after 6 months, right?
There's a chance he doesn't play this year.
And that's it. There's truly a chance that he does not play this year. And I think what I'm feeling like is they understand what they're doing for the future. And it's not the short-term goal, it's the long-term goal. We'll have to see how that pans out, right? Like that's with anything. So let's just say Devin Carter doesn't play, and then you look at what they added, what they've tried to tweak with, and I feel like their depth could be better.
I think it's pretty good.
I do too, but last year, even when the Kings made the move for Chris Duarte, I honestly thought that maybe it could be better. He's going to be paired up with Domas Sabonis. I mean, we saw times in training camp where he was starting over Kevin Huerter, right? And so there was these moments where I'm like, ooh, this could be his year. So I have these questions. I don't know how exactly I feel quite yet. I don't even know who the starting group is necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's a big question, right? Is going back to who is going to be the starting shooting guard next year? And I know you mentioned Keon Ellis. We brought up Keon Ellis too. There's a portion of the fan base that would bring up Malik Monk. I think Malik Monk is capable of being a starter, but to some of the points you made, I like him best, especially with this team coming off the bench. The guy that I think has the biggest question mark over his head is someone that was so effective 2 seasons ago when he hit over 200 threes at a 40% clip, and that's Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter last year was not good at all, right? Like he could not find any consistency. The shot was off. The defense, which is not particularly good anyway, I felt like took a step back, and he seemed at times in his own head. But what I've said to Morgan, he had his worst year of his NBA career. I truly believe Kevin Huerter is not the Kevin Huerter of last year. So what version are you going to get of him? I could see a world where he is starting for them because he's 6'7". He's got
Big
some
body.
length, and maybe with the lineup you got out there that you probably want a little more size.
Understands the game well.
He can get some good looks from three, decent playmaker too in the two-man game. I think he's got a lot of nice things that he can bring to a team, as he showed the year they made the playoffs.
Yeah. Now,
what's his role? Is it coming off the bench? Because if all of a sudden you start Keon Ellis, okay, but then you got Monk, Huerter, Lyles off your bench, sprinkle in a little Alex Len for 10 minutes a night, backing up Sabonis. Right. I like it. And then, Devin Carter, I'm not factoring him in, but there is a world, if you're being optimistic, that post-trade deadline, Devin Carter is back and makes his debut. And maybe, in March, he gets comfortable. It's a lot to count on for a rookie. However, he's not like, a 19-year-old rookie.
Yeah.
This guy is experienced,
matured,
a freak athlete, and can guard 1 through 3.
But he's also never played in the NBA before, and that's the point I always like to make, because it is a question mark. You know what he's capable of, but do you know what he's capable of in the NBA after coming back from an injury?
But he also doesn't have to have that pressure on him either. So if you get anything out of him, that's a win. The other reality is, Sabonis, the two guys who led the NBA in minutes last year, Demar Derozan and Domantas Sabonis. Now, I don't know if that trend's going to continue next year, and maybe it doesn't. And maybe for the Kings, it's best if it doesn't. Maybe you don't play DeMar DeRozan that many minutes, as much as he did last year. Maybe you knock down De'Aaron Fox's minutes just a little bit. But, they're going to lean heavy on, Fox, Sabonis, DeRozan, and Murray, I think.
Yeah, I got to say, great analysis. I agree with a lot of those points. I want to be clear, right? Huerter to me is such an interesting player because I do believe he's a bit better than what he was last year. I thought last year he was a clear negative for the Kings. My thing is, while he does have those offensive boosts, I'm much more a fan of Keon Ellis having that initial start because it sets the tone. And I just think he's such a great cog that's not going to ask for the ball as much, can shoot the ball, can put the ball on the floor to attack closeouts, and more importantly, defensively, he's bringing it. And with DeMar DeRozan in the starting lineup, as you said, it takes the offensive pressure from Fox to have to do as much, which could, lead to Fox having his breakout defensive season with Keon, right? And then having Monk paired with a shooter off of your bench makes a ton of sense to me. I like that fit a whole lot. I think you can experiment with Kevin Huerter starting. I just feel like then you have Keon Ellis as a backup defensive spark plug, which isn't bad, but I just don't think it's the most potent you could offer.
Yeah, I think too with Huerter, I think last year what really messed with him, in my opinion, is he comes into training camp a year after the Kings won 48 games. At the time, had the #1 offensive rating, I guess. In NBA history, it seems like every year that number goes higher. But at the time, #1 offensive rating. And then you come into camp and you learn, I'm going to be fighting for my shooting guard spot. I think it messed with him a little bit. So the point being is, I think this year, he knows what he's walking into. If you want, you're going to have to earn minutes this year, because when Keon came in, the Kings defense went from being kind of an average defensive team to becoming a top 10 defensive team. And Keon, like you said, can shoot the ball too. He can do some other things out there. So I think you're going to learn a lot about Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter is a flawed player for sure, but he could shoot it. He could pass it, 6'7". The major issue with him is, come playing time, what's going to happen is teams are going to hunt him, blah, 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 blah. But that's where we go into the Keon Ellis element. So I do think it's going to be an interesting thing to watch for Sacramento. They still have weaknesses. I think size is still going to be a bit of an issue. That's something they didn't address. They they didn't fix all their issues by just adding Demar Derozan. I think they're hoping McDaniels can give them something. I'm not high on that, but if you could swing, maybe he could be a guy in your rotation, long athlete. I don't know.
Another question mark.
He was not good at all last year, so they're flawed. A lot of teams in the West are flawed too, but I think I like where they're at to be a pretty damn good team in the West.
I hear that. Before we transition into the Western Conference preview in terms of like all these teams where the Kings might fit up into that mix, my last question would be about the Kings' overall future and where the team / franchise is now. How do you think the new CBA is going to impact the next couple of seasons for the Kings? And what's the most important thing they have to do this year to be prepared for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think De'Aaron Fox's contract situation is going to be one that, everyone's keeping an eye on. He's chasing a supermax, if he gets an all NBA, like that's going to be interesting. And I think the point you bring up is just the new reality of what teams are facing. We've talked about with the Denver Nuggets, some of the decisions that they've had to make because of this new CBA. Mm-hmm. And so I think the Kings are in a pretty solid spot, but, they're going to have the Fox thing coming up, Keegan's extension too. They've got Sabonis locked in. DeMar's deal is structured pretty interestingly. I think it's technically like 2 years of it guaranteed. So I think they're in a solid spot, but this is just going to be the new reality. I don't think anyone truly knows like how it's all going to shake out because I think everyone's still learning it. And I think the reality too is most teams you don't want to be a second apron team. You don't. Unless like you have a championship squad. And as a small market team, you have to be very careful here, making sure you don't put yourself in a situation where it restricts you. And then all of a sudden you got all this money going out for a team that's not contending for a championship.
You got to be willing to take risks, but at the same time, like they have to be calculated. And I mean, it's a lot of work and sometimes you're going to screw it up, but like that is their job not to screw it up. So like, that is what I'm always told. I always try to like humanize even the people in some of these front offices and people are like, of course, it's their job. Like it's their job. And I'm like, you're right. Fire their asses if they don't get it done.
And that's why like if Keegan's able to have a big year this year, take a step this year, that's a big win for Sacramento. You think about even something like Keon Ellis, they signed him to a really
steal of a deal. That's exactly what I was saying last year, Deuce.
Those are the moves, right? Those are the moves you hit on. Is someone that he wasn't drafted, he was in your system as a two-way deal, earns a guaranteed deal, and you get him on a team-friendly deal. And you're going to see more of those situations in the league where you're trying to lock up maybe these second rounders or undrafted guys that have been in your system and you've seen enough growth, and you get them on team-friendly deals. I'm not sure I like this new CBA. I think it's so challenging.
It's a lot of rules.
It's a lot, but it also, puts some pressure on the organization to make be maybe more thoughtful with their moves and make going all in a little more painful. Ooh, do we really want to go in now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got to be honest. As a Warriors fan, I absolutely hate it. Obviously, it makes you have to do so many questioning things to make the right moves for your team.
As a Warriors fan, exactly.
You benefited from the biggest CBA.
I know. No one That's true.
No one feels bad for you.
Listen,
Curry. I hate the fact that we go. I want to be down on the Warriors so bad. Everything. Steph Curry, man. Steph in the Olympics.
Team USA. Like it doesn't matter. He's not only aging like fine wine. Yeah, it's just like he can uplift an entire team. Like it's a team sport, but no, it's Steph Curry for the Warriors.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I do love having the opportunity to watch him every night, but the new CBA to me, what it does is it makes teams have to realize this is not a fantasy game where you can just trade all the picks, get this player in who's a cool guy on paper, but your roster around these guys are not good. I use this example all the time because it's real. I think the Phoenix Suns are one of those teams where you sign for Bradley Beal, who is on a untradeable contract. You can't massively make needle mover trades unless you dump salary. If he says no, you can't do anything. So now you're kind of in a position where you can make the playoffs, but are you really getting out of the first round? are you really getting to the conference finals? Probably not. And if that's the case, is Devin Booker going to be happy about that? Is Kevin Durant going to be happy about it? No. But you can't trade Bradley Beal because he's guaranteed. So at that point, it's like, well, we might have to trade Kevin Durant or Booker. But then if you trade one, maybe the other wants to go, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, like it's such a complicating position, but I do think this puts an emphasis on a smart front office. The really good front offices are doing things to prepare themselves for that. And Keon, to me, is a great step in that direction. I'm telling you, for a guy to have his productivity, who wasn't even making $1 million last season, like that's just crazy value to me.
It's incredible value. And you're right. That's exactly the type of moves you have to make. That's my one thing with the CBA too. I just think, I do think, when front offices are smart enough to like make a move like that, or you do well in the draft, I don't think you should be punished from a cap perspective when you draft well. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like in some regards, if you knock it out of the park with good draft picks, you shouldn't have to worry about going into the apron to keep those picks. Because in my opinion, you need to be rewarded for making good draft picks and rewarded for keeping guys in your market. And it sucks if you have to get to a point where like, oh, do we want to keep this guy? That's what kind of sucks.
I mean, it's the league trying to keep things even around the league. You know, like they want to make sure everything's
absolutely
competitive. There's and look at us.
I do feel like it went too far the other way. That's my point.
And we'll see too. Yeah. We'll see, because I mean, right now when we talk about the Western Conference, we do keep asking ourselves, wait, but is this team is a Denver Nuggets team that much better with just Jokic and Jamal Murray around, you know, and having to obviously dissect the entire rest of the roster? You know, like we get to ask ourselves questions and kind of have fun with this. And that depends on the teams and the basketball minds of being like, well, what actually pairs well with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant? Not just a whole bunch of, I don't know. Like I don't need to be mean, but like a whole bunch of role players. Yeah.
It's the full roster image that matters now. Like people have to pay attention to these small details, because if you don't, you'll be in a position where you literally are stuck with that team. You can go over all you want, but once you are at the second apron level, you better be, you know, very confident that that team can go out there and win a championship. If not, you're in purgatory for a couple of seasons where there's so many limitations, which is why a team like Denver had to let go of KCP. Otherwise, they would wind up in that type of overall situation. So great points. But that does bring us now to the overall Western Conference. I'm really curious about your perspective on the West. I'll give mine after you guys. What do you think about the 2025 Western Conference?
Dude, who are the bad teams? Portland, and you can go, I guess, Utah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, like, you can make a case the Spurs are going to, if the Spurs won 40 plus games next year, would that like shock people?
No,
I don't think it'd be shocking.
I don't think it would be
competitive.
And now that they have vets alongside a freak of nature in Wemby, who has a year of this experience under his belt and everything as well. But yeah, you go around the West and you go, okay, like there's still that question mark over the Pelicans, but being someone who covers the Sacramento Kings, they beat the Sacramento Kings 6 damn times last year.
All I know, dude, is I saw the picture of Zion, and I don't know if he on Ozempic. I don't know what he did, but
hey, it looks crazy, doesn't it?
Morin, did
wait, I did not see it. Why?
No, it looks crazy.
All I know is
Ozempic.
I don't care. Good for him.
Because I need to get myself some Ozempic.
Because
Ozempic talks.
If Zion is coming in like the guy we saw enter the league, the guy we saw at Duke.
In Duke,
that changes it a little bit, you know. So, the Pelicans, I mean. But if you're going to the top, let's go to the top. To me, right, it's OKC, what they did over the offseason. I just think they're going to be better. I think Chet's going to be better. I think Caruso. Yeah. What the hell? How do they have so many
great additions, only having to give up Josh Giddey, who for them was a negative for the most part.
Yeah. And then, I'm still high on Minnesota. Ant is he's a star. He's a star. You're right.
Dallas.
I had to fight for that one.
I know you did, because I pushed on the Cat thing. I'm still not sold on like the Cat thing, and who knows what it looks like long term. But Ant is, to me, he's a budding star in this league.
Here's a team that will probably drop the Clippers.
Yeah.
But I mean, even so, it's like, well, how many games is Kawhi Leonard playing? Like, if you just don't know.
So it's, to me, it's I don't know the exact order, but OKC, Minnesota, and Dallas. I think Dallas got better. I do. I mean, I like Najee Marshall.
Yep.
And Clay.
He was a steal.
Clay may not be the same guy anymore. He's playing with Kyrie and Luka.
Yeah.
Clay, can you knock down some threes?
Catch and shoot.
I'll tell you, that Dallas offense wants some consistent 3-point shooting. You had him, the toughness of
and then
Najee
it's not like
Marshall.
they were the greatest defensive team, and then they kept getting better and better and saw some growth, especially with Gafford in the middle. And then if you have that second line of defense, even if Clay isn't able to, be that great along the perimeter, you have help. You have this better team defense that we obviously saw throughout the playoffs for the Dallas Mavericks. But another team, the Memphis Grizzlies, Ja Morant, clean slate. Are you seeing something different from
that team?
What kind of jump do they make? So, but I do think it's those three teams you mentioned: OKC, Minnesota, and Dallas. And then after that, I go, okay, yeah, you can make a case. You could sell me on the Kings being a 5th seed or a 4th seed. You could sell me on the Suns doing that. You could sell me on the Pelicans doing that. Like, I could be talked into it. That my whole point is, like, again, I think we're in a similar situation where from 4 to like 12, who the hell knows, And, I know we were talking about the Spurs. Like, look, reality is the West is super difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I think last year, when you look at the situation they had at point guard, you're looking around going, what is this? Right? Like, you've got Chris Paul. Now, I like Stephon Castle. He may not be like some elite player next year. I'm not saying he's a rookie, he's young, but I saw enough from him in the California Classic. We called some of those games, and then watching him in his briefly in Vegas. Like, he's got good feel, man. Good finishing ability. He's tough. Will the 3-point shot come? We'll see. But I don't know. I was telling Morgan, I said, even if the Spurs are bad next year, where they're like a 30-win team, 25-30-win team, they're going to be annoying. And that's the biggest thing, is there's going to be annoying teams still in the West, even if they're bad. And that's what makes it so hard.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Every offseason, I do these piles in a way because I want to have a better, deeper understanding of all the teams in the league, the West teams and also the East teams. But I think the Western Conference is so tricky because, again, a team like Memphis, to me, where you have Ja Morant coming back when he was healthy before he tore his, I believe, Achilles. They had the best backup big man in the league. He's also back for that team. JJJ looked very rough last year, but I think that was important so he could get those reps up in terms of his overall offensive development. Now that comes back with Ja Morant and Bane, which when those three are in the lineup together, they win a lot of games. It just is what it is. So I kind of feel like those players with also G.G. Jackson, I feel the same way about them as I did last year about Minnesota. I think they are like a top 4 team based on that. Also the pace and the defense, they're going to be a frightening team. And then when you go down, the Spurs, another great example, right? Chris Paul, I always said in Golden State was interesting, but they were always small ball type. Chris Paul and Draymond were a bit redundant with the ball, as I thought they would be. But Chris Paul on the Spurs makes a ton of sense because he adds a level of calmness and leadership and organization to a young team that needs it. A young team that somehow could not throw the biggest guy on the court the ball. Chris Paul will do that. So I think that
a guy that can actually throw a lob, you mean? Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, they absolutely needed that. And a guy in Wemby who was playing limited minutes for the majority of the season. And then at the tail end of the season was averaging 25 with like 4 blocks a game. Like, if he just gets more time with the ball coming to him, he could have a monster breakout year too. The Pelicans, another team which is so hard to call because their best lineups were not their starters. Their bench lineups were actually their best, with Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, a skinny Zion now at the 5. It sounds good. And then also they traded for DeJounte Murray. Like, there's so many questions you have.
I don't know. I'm only kind of down on the Pelicans right now.
He is every year.
No, I think the Brandon Ingram. No, I'm because I love Zion. I think when he's right, like, look out.
Yeah.
But, like the Brandon Ingram's contract, like what's happening there? Like, is he happy? Is he going to be cool with everything? How's that fit? What's the fit? I do think having a guy like DeJounte Murray and him having the ball in his hand should energize him. And, the last time BI played with point guards, like he was a very effective player and he did take threes. You think about how when he played with Drew Holiday or Lonzo Ball, like you saw, I think, in my opinion, the best version of him. But I'm looking at the lineup. I'm like, okay, is CJ coming off the bench now? Because I can tell you what, Herb Jones is an all-defensive guy. He's got to be out there playing big minutes. Trey Murphy has something in. He's got to play big minutes. But you lose Valanciunas. And whether, you love Valanciunas or not, like he brought something to their locker room as a leader. He brought toughness. You lose Najee Marshall. I like Dyson Daniels, even though I don't think he got like a great opportunity there, raw. But you lose Larry Nance. Their team's different, and they weren't going to run it back. So we'll see what it looks like. I'm just going to be interested to see what those rotations look like, and if they're willing to make some tough calls of maybe bringing someone like CJ off the bench and playing him in a reduced role.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting because the dynamic of how Brandon Ingram, Zion, and DeJounte all fit on the floor is questionable, but the pace that they can run at with those players should be interesting. Also, the three-point shooting, like Herb has to start Trey Murphy with his three-point shooting and his defense can be big, but what are the lineups like? I just have so many questions about them, but they have the talent to pop.
Where are their bigs? Are they just going to go small? Well, not small.
That's the question.
Zion's tiny now, so who knows?
It's just an interesting fight in the overall West. Even a team like the Rockets, right, where they did not have Tari Eason for their entire year. They drafted Reed, who is a great shooter so far, right? Şengün and Jalen Green had dominant stretches, right? How that fits for a whole season where they had like the top 7 defense in the NBA without Tari Eason. There's just so many teams that have a claim to be better. It's hard to make sense of things.
And that's, going back to it, you just brought up the defense and it got me thinking about Memphis because I was so impressed with the job Taylor Jenkins did last year. I don't remember the final number, but Memphis they had to have played like 40 something guys last year.
So many injuries last year. Yeah.
It was insane. Yet the one consistent thing they did last year with all the different pieces in and out, guys who were playing in the G League or free agents, they defended every single night.
They played so hard. They played for their culture. They had a culture. They have a system. And like that is, even you look down the line. Yeah. You go to the Memphis Hustle players, the G League team, and you look at like they have that same standard for them. And that's why when you do look at internal growth with some of these organizations and you talk about someone like Keon Ellis, why that is so important that the love and the attention is also within your G League team, because you could be in a situation like Jenkins was last year and had to play 100 million dudes.
Yeah. 100%. Like that's amazing thing. So interesting. But now that we did that, right, and we circle back to where the Kings fit in this mix, I have to say for me, I think the peak spot that I think they could peak out as in terms of if their season goes exactly how they want it to go, I think this is a top 4 team in the Western Conference at their peak, just because of the durability piece of having DeMar DeRozan and also Sabonis, right? If you have to go through a Monk stretch where he's hurt or a Fox stretch where he's hurt, you have other guys who can fill in that load. Also, Keegan Murray becoming a more offensively inclined player with his defense can also fill in that role slightly as well, right? Keon with his overall, two-way ability. I think those things, with the pace that the Kings love to play on a night-to-night basis, can catch a lot of teams off balance and off guard, which makes me feel like their peak could be there. I think their lower end, if there's injuries, if things don't gel the way they want to, if maybe Kevin Huerter isn't that productive yet again, I think that's probably around the 7 or 8 seed range. And it's still dangerous because, again, if you're talking about single elimination, teams are going to fight to get out the play-in. They do not want to be in the play-in.
Trust me.
We saw
I have nightmares from what the Pelicans did to the Kings last year in the regular season in that play-in game because they just owned the Sacramento
But remember
Kings.
what the Kings did to the Warriors,
I know.
and it felt like
same thing.
It
felt
felt
like the NBA championship for Kings fans.
If the goal for Sacramento, you got go win 50 games and then don't worry about the play.
Yeah.
Go win 50 games. But you're
right.
I think ceiling, I could see, somewhere, 3-4, but I can also see them in 10th. Like you could paint a picture of like, third year in a row where like there's some frustration. Maybe the DeRozan fit's not as great. Oh, he's banged up more this year, or you could paint a you could paint a picture that's like, ooh, that's a grim picture, and it's not
right.
And the West is just tough. And
it was last year.
What's the difference between 10 and 4 next year? Like that's going to be interesting to see.
And what we saw with the Sacramento Kings last year is losing a game against the Detroit Pistons on a Tuesday night cannot happen again, right? Like
it swings the whole season. Yeah,
exactly.
Agreed.
Because then when we came down to the last stretch of the season, how important every single game was and how much more pressure it put on. And by the way, great job by the league to do these things with the play-in tournament in the first place, because it does put that pressure on and it makes other teams want to screw it up for other teams. And it's fantastic. But when you're the Sacramento Kings and you are looking to win and get out of the Western Conference, you can't put yourself in that position. You got to win those Tuesday night games in the beginning of the season, whatever it is.
Right.
Get your mind straight. It's 82 games, plus hopefully, but then you're done. Then you can rest.
Absolutely. I think that is a spot on point. And again, I can't wait to watch it because last year was crazy, but on a night to night basis with everything that's at stake for a lot of these teams, again, this new CBA makes you have to think, well, damn, we can't wait 2 more years. It didn't work this season. This guy has to go, right? You're going to see a lot more movement in place of that because guys are going to qualify for All NBA. They're going to have to get paid. You're going to reach the second apron because of that, or to not reach it, you're going to have to make significant roster changes. So for every team that's trying to compete, this season matters. It matters a lot more than it did before in my eyes. So I can't wait to see it. But I just want to say for everyone who made it to the end of this podcast, shout out to Deuce and Mo. They've worked hard for a lot of years. For me as a beginner content creator, seeing their older videos and how they work themselves up to where they are now, calling games and all these great things. I want to say I appreciate you guys. This was a great conversation about the Kings, and I can't wait for the season to start. I'm so excited about basketball. I live and breathe this stuff, man. So
I know you do, man.
And you're crushing it, Gifted. Yeah. So congratulations being so consistent. And like you said, I think, the 50 what podcast?
54th.
This is 54. Yeah.
Congrats. Very cool to see.
Just like the great Brian Skinner Award number 54 for the Kings.
Well,
there you go. Tie-in.
Time out. Not great.
Yeah, he's obviously either way, Gifted, thank you for having us on your podcast together.
Yeah, shout out to the chat too. I love seeing the engagement too. That's one of my favorite parts about when we go live after Kings games is the chat, man. Sometimes it gets hot in there. Yeah. You know it. But it's fun. It's fun to have a community. It's cool to see your community grow too. So we appreciate you, man. Absolutely, we're on the grind. I recently got a collaboration with Bleacher Report that's coming up in the next couple of days. So I'm working through content on the Warriors side of things. So everyone's trying to grow and move on to the next chapters of their lives and whatnot. And this podcast has at least helped me to, I guess, ground my thoughts on every team before the season starts. Yeah. And I can't wait for Kings basketball. But please check out Deucemo. All other links will be in the description. This podcast will probably drop on Thursday. I'll have clips and all of that circulating. I'm a one-man team, so we try for all those things. But any last words, guys?
No, I guess just thank you and congratulations on all the collaborations that you're doing and stuff. And seriously, just thank you for letting us be a part of your community tonight. It's always fun talking to you.
I got something.
No.
What's up?
We're all basketball fans, okay?
Yeah.
And I like that you have conversations about the game. I know it's all the hot takes that get thrown out there, blah, blah, blah. There's nuance to this game.
Of course.
So let's celebrate the game.
Yeah.
Let's enjoy the fact that this league has never been better. It's never been more talented. Let's all enjoy the journey together. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Deuce, great way to end the podcast. But have a good one, people. All of their links will be in the description box below. Catch you on the next podcast. Peace out.